Hello and welcome to the Biohack Her podcast. I'm Azra Alagich, your host and founder of Biohack Her. I'm an integrative nutrition health coach specialising in longevity for women, a health and wellness journalist, writer, corporate consultant, and a biohacking advocate. Biohack Her is a space where we can explore ways to optimise our health to live well longer, whether it's through improving our nutrition, exercising, cryotherapy, supplementation, technology, and more. I'll be bringing you information and interviews with the best longevity experts to help you understand what you can do to optimize your health, prevent disease, and slow down or even reverse the symptoms of aging by taking control of your unique bio-individuality. Want to know more? Let's dive in. Hey everyone, today I'm in conversation with Dr. Mike Van Thielen to discuss the benefits of molecular hydrogen, stem cell therapy, and biohacking. Dr. Mike has written 8 books, is the founder of the Health Freedom Movement, and is the medical director at HydroHeal, an innovative medical company with the latest molecular hydrogen solutions for cellular optimization and health. He's a sought-after speaker with over 3 decades of involvement with best optimal health practices, anti-aging and regenerative medicine, sports performance, nutrition, supplementation, and biohacking strategies. He was the assistant coach and therapist to the Belgian Olympic swim team for the Olympic Games in Atlanta, and he also has a PhD in holistic nutrition and is a TEDx speaker. Dr. Mike breaks down the benefits of molecular hydrogen as being the best antioxidant that can fight oxidative stress inside the cell to protect our DNA and mitochondria. Its anti-inflammatory effects and how it stimulates autophagy, which helps with health and longevity. But he's also a strong advocate of building a strong foundation for your health and walks us through his top, often no-cost, biohacking tips. Let's jump in. Hey, Dr. Mike, welcome to the Biohacker podcast.
Thanks for having me, Azra.
Great to have you on. Let's get cracking and talking about hydrogen. So it seems to be the new buzzword at the moment. Can you break it down for us? What is molecular hydrogen?
Yes, basically it's 2 hydrogen atoms in a covalent bond, but we're not going to jump into chemistry, right? But molecular hydrogen is the smallest molecule and the lightest element in the universe. And it has many, many health benefits. Normally, we produce hydrogen in our body as a result of the fermentation by bacteria of fruits and vegetables, fibers in our stomach. But obviously, as we age, most of us don't eat enough fibers, not enough fruits and vegetables. And as we age, that process is not as efficient either. So we kind of lack hydrogen. If we look at the Krebs cycle, hydrogen transport cycle, hydrogen is everywhere in every chemical reaction. And so it's very important. And right now we have a scientific body of about 2,400 published studies on molecular hydrogen, showing that it has positive effects not only on longevity and our health, but on over 170 diseases, including cancer and neurodegenerative diseases. The other thing I would say is unique and gives a lot of people hope again is the fact that it's 100% safe. You can apply it in your own home. You don't need any medical supervision. And you can't go any wrong. There's no potential dangers or side effects. So, it's one of those quote-unquote new biohacks that it's very safe and can help many people on many different levels.
Yeah. In terms of those research papers and studies that you cited, are those human clinical trials as well? Because we know that in the biohacking field, there's been a lot of studies done on various things on mice. Doesn't necessarily always translate to humans. So what in terms of the human clinical trials?
Yeah, we have both animal studies and human trials and human studies, which obviously is great, as you just mentioned. And again, there's lots of trials going on a daily basis and studies coming out because they see the potential of this harmless medical gas is what it really is. And so, yes, there are many human trials also.
So break it down for us in terms of the benefits of health, specifically what you mentioned, chronic diseases and so on. Can you break it down in a little bit more detail, please?
Yes, I think the best way to understand it is talk a little bit on what it does on a physiological, biological level, and then it easily can be translated into all those diseases because it sounds like too good, right? Oh, it works on all these 170 diseases. Well, it's because it does something on a cellular level, and that's why it has a positive effect on whatever it is that we do, right, or that we have or that we're battling. So, number one, I would say it is a selective antioxidant. And what does that mean? We have, especially during COVID, everybody heard about antioxidants, and we have to take vitamin C and vitamin D and zinc and selenium, and we heard about glutathione. And that's all good, but these antioxidants, they are larger than hydrogen and they are charged. And because they have a charge, they cannot cross the cell membrane and they cannot enter the cell. Hydrogen is so small and it is not charged that it easily can cross the cell membrane and enter the cell, therefore protecting our DNA, our mitochondria, our RNA, our proteins inside the cell, etc. So the first thing to understand is that's the only antioxidant that can fight oxidative stress inside the cell and protect our cells. Number two, I think it also helps the other antioxidants that operate outside of the cell, like the vitamin C's of this world, because we have something in our cell that's called the battery of our cell. It's NADPH. NADPH is the battery of our cells. You could think of it as an electron reservoir. And when we think about our regular antioxidants, we all heard the story that an antioxidant donates an electron to a free radical to neutralize it again, right? To fight free radical damage. But what most people don't realize is as soon as that antioxidant, for example, vitamin C, donates that electron, it becomes useless, it becomes oxidized. But what if we have an electron reservoir and we could donate that same molecule of vitamin C another electron? And another one, another one, another one, then that same molecule could exponentially continue to fight more of the excess free radicals. So that's what hydrogen does. It kind of gives the other antioxidants, a longer life by donating electrons and helping the production of NADPH. And it's the only antioxidant that can fight oxidative stress inside the cell. So that's number one. Number two, it has been proven to have a very strong anti-inflammatory effect. We all know, and even conventional medicine now agrees, that 90% of all diseases are directly related to systemic inflammation, right? And so hydrogen has a very positive effect on that because it increases the NRF2 pathway. It increases TNF, tumor necrosing factor, which is another cytokine. We all heard about cytokines and interleukins, and they're all basically molecules that cause inflammation. And molecular hydrogen reduces all of those. So that's why it has a strong anti-inflammatory effect. So when we talk about any inflammatory disease like rheumatoid arthritis, autoimmune diseases, chronic pain, it has a pretty immediate effect also. And then I guess third, it also has been shown in those studies to be anti-apoptosis. So that's the cell death, right? The programmed cell death. And it also stimulates autophagy, which is cleaning up the useless cells in our body, which helps with health and longevity. So I think those are the top four things that it does on a biological, physiological level, on a cellular level.
It sounds like it's kind of like the miracle, drug almost when you describe it in that way. And you said that it's sort of the prime antioxidant. In terms of how it differs to other antioxidants, because there are so many others out there rather, how specifically does it differ?
Well, yeah, because it can enter the cell and the others can't, right? So it has that effect on a cellular level. For example, let's talk about cancer, right? What is cancer? Cancer basically is a mutation of the nuclear DNA and the mitochondrial DNA, and that causes the cancer, right? Now, what causes that mutation? Well, it's the free radicals inside the cell, the hydroxyl free radicals. And so hydrogen can get in the cell and neutralize those free radicals. Other antioxidants cannot enter the cell. And by neutralizing the hydroxyl free radicals, we prevent mutation of the DNA, and therefore we suppress tumors and we suppress cancer. So that's pretty powerful. And it's only because it can enter the cell, right? Same with neurodegenerative disease. When we talk about dementia, Alzheimer, Parkinson's, MS, traumatic brain injury, stroke, ADHD, memory loss, all those types of things, hydrogen can easily cross the blood-brain barrier. We know many nutrients cannot, right? And then once it crosses the blood-brain barrier, that's a mouthful, it can easily enter those brain cells again. Do what? Protecting the RNA, the DNA, the mitochondria, etc. So that's how it has an effect on anything that has to do with neurodegeneration in our brain.
How is it administered? Because I know that there are hydrogen tablets out there as an example, supplements and so on. What is the best way to administer it?
Yeah, it's a great question because obviously now you can buy cheap stuff on Amazon. You can buy units on Alibaba. And again, I gotta warn people, it's still a medical gas, so you gotta make sure you get a high quality product and you're actually inhaling molecular hydrogen and not anything else. So you make a good point. But the two methods of application are hydrogen water, which all the studies have been done with hydrogen water because inhalation is pretty new. But the hydrogen inhalation is more effective in a way that you can get a lot more concentration, a lot more molecular hydrogen in your body in a much shorter time, based on the unit and based on how much it produces, of course. So it's much more effective and you can get saturation of your body much faster. Now, the unit that I have, I'm looking at it because I use it an hour a day. It does both. I can inhale the molecular hydrogen and I can also make hydrogen water with it. Why do I still make the hydrogen water? Well, because I'm going to drink water anyways. So I may as well make it hydrogen water, right? There's a few things that we got to look at. When we look at those bottles that everybody's promoting on social media, yes,
Right.
they are producing molecular. There you go. They are producing molecular hydrogen, but many times they tell you to drink it immediately, and there's a reason for that because it's unstable. Because the molecular hydrogen is produced as a byproduct of changing the pH of the water. So these bottles, what's happening is you're simply changing the pH, and molecular hydrogen is a byproduct, and therefore you got to drink it immediately. So we really don't know how much we get, what the purity is, and those types of things, right? I mean, still better than regular water, right? And easy when you go travel for sure. But when you have a good unit, there's several good units on the market, but it produces stabilized hydrogen because it's a form of electrolysis. And what it does is the only consumable you have is distilled water, right? So we have an H2O molecule. And we all know when we go underwater, we can't breathe. We can't extract that oxygen, unlike fish, from that H2O molecule. But what the electrolysis does, it separates the H2O and makes two gases, oxygen and hydrogen gas, right? And then the hydrogen gas we can directly inhale, or we can infuse our water with it and create a suspension of hydrogen H2 in H2O, right? It doesn't mix, it doesn't make new water. It's just a suspension of molecular hydrogen in the water. And that's basically how it works. So when I make hydrogen water, it's stable. I can put it in the refrigerator for a whole week and I still have all my molecular hydrogen. But again, I think the key is that inhalation here is much more effective and much faster. If I go, my unit, for example, produces it's a flow rate of 600 cc's per minute. Flow rate is how much I actually inhale, but only 4.3% is pure molecular hydrogen, right? So I'm actually inhaling about 25 cc's or 25 milligrams per minute in 1 minute. Now, if I drink a liter of water, it usually contains about 1.7 milligrams. So
Right.
I would have to drink 25 liters versus 1 minute of inhalation. So that's kind of the comparison, right? But it's both pure molecular hydrogen. So when it comes to battling disease, cancer, degenerative disease, I think the inhalation would be a much better approach at this time, just because we can really saturate the body with hydrogen continuously and much rapidly than, who can drink, gallons and gallons of water every day, right?
Yeah, for sure. I recently came back from Dallas after attending the biohacking conference over there,
Yes,
and
that's great.
it was great. And I actually got to try hydrogen inhalation while I was there. And I must
Very good.
admit,
Yeah,
after I think I was on it for about 15 minutes, I think it was, and I
yeah.
tell you what, that night
You
I
slept like a baby.
slept like a baby. But my mind was just so sharp and so crystal clear for like the next 24 to 48 hours after that. It
Yeah.
was really amazing in terms of the impact on me, above and beyond anything else that I got to have a play with, at the tech hall
Yes,
there.
of course.
I
Yeah.
just found that the hydrogen inhalation was quite significant in terms of the impact that it had. When you're administering it to patients, so, obviously I'm assuming that for a cancer patient, it would be very different. If you're doing it, as a maintenance or as a biohack, what would the difference be?
Well, we still really didn't figure out. We know what the saturation in the blood is because when we inhale the hydrogen, the blood plasma actually carries it through the cells, right?
Yeah.
And the saturation of the blood is approximately 2 cc's per liter, but we only have 6 to 8 liters of blood. So we saturate the blood quickly, but the blood obviously then drops it off at the cells, and we got trillions and trillions of cells. So we really didn't figure out that yet, but I would say, the more we inhale, the more it's used. Now, we cannot inhale or drink too much of the hydrogen because excess hydrogen in the body is simply exhaled. So if we have too much, our body just exhales it. That's why it's 100% safe. And that's why really we can't overdo it either. Now, preventatively, I inhale at least an hour per day, but it doesn't take time away because sometimes I put it on during a podcast or when I'm doing paperwork or watching TV or whatever. It's just a simple unit that's sitting next to me on the couch and I'm doing paperwork and I'm inhaling it. So it doesn't take time away. But if you're a patient, you could actually use it during the night and sleep with it and do it for 8 hours. And that's what I suggest with my patients is, the more the better because we really can't overdo it. For me, obviously, still trying to just be disease free. I just do it preventatively, as you said, but also it's not just for people that are having ailments. It's for us. It's for those that want to biohack, that want to live longer, that want to increase their quality of life, that want to increase their longevity. Because again, it has an effect on a cellular level. It fights oxidative stress. It fights inflammation. It also helps with the repair system, the DNA repair system, indirectly at least, because we all have an innate DNA repair system called the ARTD1 repair system, which is a system of 17 enzymes that basically locate the damage done to DNA and then starts repairing it. But the reason why it doesn't work in most of us as humans is because that DNA repair system requires fuel. And I'm sure you know about NAD+. NAD+ is the fuel for our DNA repair
Yeah.
system. So we need to make sure there's an ample amount of NAD+ in our body. And again, hydrogen has a role in the amount of NAD plus that's in our body. So it also has an indirect effect on our repair DNA system. So even if you're an athlete or performer, an executive that wants to, you mentioned your mind was clear, right?
Mm.
That wants to perform at a higher level. It helps the mitochondria. It gives us clean energy. It cleans up lactic acid from, if you're an athlete, from our blood and our muscles much faster. It delays fatigue. It recovers faster. This is all from those studies that I mentioned. We can find all those studies on how it has effect on performance and also how it has effect on our longevity.
An indication of cost for a unit if somebody was wanting to purchase one, to do biohacking on a regular basis as a
Yeah.
proactive maintenance approach. How much would somebody
Yeah.
be looking at forking out for one of these?
I found the best ones, an HH300, and we can leave the link there. Hydroheal.com is the company where I speak for because I have their units and I love them. Hydroheal, the HH300, which is unit that puts out a flow rate of 300 cc's per minute, it's approximately 4,000 US dollars. The HH600, the one that I have, produces 600 cc's per minute. That's approximately 5,900. However, the company has payment plans and also has subscriptions. So you could get these as low as $149 per month.
Yeah, right. That's quite reasonable, isn't it? All right, let's talk stem cells. I know
Yes.
that this is a space that you're into as well. I kind of feel like you're the master of all things biohacking and nutrition and everything based on all of your degrees that you've done and your experience and the number of books that you've written. Again, there's a lot of new research around to do with stem cells. And I think that sometimes there's mixed messages out there in terms of what works, what doesn't work, what is safe, what isn't safe. As an example, here in Australia, you're legally only allowed to get stem cell therapy if it's from umbilical cords and, if it's for the treatment of a blood disorder like leukemia. So if you
Yeah.
want to have any sort of treatment for joints or something like that, you've got to go out of the country. You have to go to
Yeah.
Mexico or Bangkok or somewhere like that.
Yeah.
Right. Which,
Yep.
I think it's a little bit disappointing because, it does show some significant positive, benefits from the research that I've read. But, can you expand a little bit more on the research and the benefits around stem cell therapy?
Yeah, I mean, and there's the same in the US, right? There's always a battle. If something works, they try to subdue it. It's just the role of the big pharma, and they don't really want us to all benefit from it, which is very obvious. But, even here in the United States, we have a lot of conventional doctors, orthopedic doctors, and orthopedic clinics that promote stem cell based therapies. But they swear by the fact that they need to harvest it from your own fat through a liposuction or your bone marrow, and obviously, research points out pretty clearly that that's certainly an outdated approach and that doesn't work as good because even common sense will tell you if the stem cells in your body would work, you wouldn't need any intervention. So they're going to take it from one part of the body and then relocate it to another part. So it just doesn't make any sense because research shows that as we age, the quantity and quality of our stem cells drastically declines. So if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and you start getting stem cells from your own body for your treatments, then obviously we have a very low quantity and quality. And that's why, you have to come back later that day or the next morning because in the laboratory setting, they're going to kind of amplify or multiply the few stem cells they were able to procure. And it's like getting a piece of paper and making a copy and then a copy of a copy. So the quality is going to be very low. And that's why they brag about, oh, we inject millions and millions and millions of cells. Yes, you do, but the quality is so low that it doesn't even matter how many you inject. So the research shows very clearly that the highest quality of stem cells comes from the Wharton's jelly of the umbilical cord. That contains the highest amount of stem cells. And obviously, they're high quality because they are new from the newborn, right? But I think that when we talk about stem cells, we got to kind of step a little bit back and look at what we want to achieve. When we talk about stem cells, we want to achieve something that's we called tissue engineering. We want to repair and we want to re-engineer damaged tissue, right? Whether it's like you said, your joints that have arthritis, or whether it's a lung disease or COPD, or whether it's your pancreas because you're diabetic, whatever it is, we want to repair and renew and re-engineer. And when we look at the science of tissue engineering, yes, stem cells play a crucial role, but there's many other bioactive molecules that are important. And so just talking about stem cells is not enough because if you just inject stem cells, but all the other components are not available, then the job's not going to be done, right? So we need bioactive molecules, we need cytokines, we need collagens type 1, 2, and 3. We need exosomes, which are the tools that the stem cells need to get the repair job done, and so on. So when I look at a product, first of all, it needs to be a combination of Wharton's jelly, which is umbilical cord, and placenta, which they call in the industry amniotic tissue and amniotic fluid. And when you combine those tools, the amniotic tissue usually has the collagens and the scaffolding. The amniotic fluid is the highest source of exosomes, which are the tools that the stem cells need, and the highest bioavailable source of stem cells is the umbilical cord. So to me, a combination of that birth tissue are the best products available for a human application.
What are your thoughts around, I suppose, the in terms of the sourcing of these tissues and these stem cells? There's been a little bit of controversy around that in terms of where that comes from. Your thoughts on that?
Well, there's a lot of miscommunication and confusion, right? Because we're talking about embryonic stem cells. Now, embryonic stem cells coming from the fetus, and obviously there's many moral and ethical issues and concerns there. But when we talk about placenta and birth tissue, that's postpartum, that's after birth, right? So we can't mix up those two. So when we talk about embryonic tissues, first of all, yes, they come from an aborted fetus or from a fetus, and they have been used in research only. But in research that they show that these embryonic stem cells, which are not fully developed yet, cannot distinguish between healthy tissue and cancerous tissue or diseased tissue. And therefore, in vitro, they show that these embryonic stem cells cause teratomas, which is a fancy word for tumors. So for that reason, they have never been used in the treatment of humans or in human applications. They only have been used in research. And that's where the moral ethical dilemma is. However, when we talk about the application of stem cells for the treatment of us, we're talking about placenta and umbilical cord, and that's after birth. Normally, when a mother gives birth, those birth tissues are what? They're disposed of. They're basically put in the garbage, right? But now what happens in many and many more hospitals is they take those birth tissues and they start testing them for what? for any potential disease, communicable disease, etc. And so the majority still is discarded, but the ones that are 100% clean are now donated to the tissue banks. The tissue banks then prepare those so manufacturers can buy the tissue, and the manufacturers then can buy their product. They sell their product to the doctors, and the doctors can inject or treat their patients. But the whole process from A to Z, from the procurement in the hospital all the way to the end user, the patient, in the United States at least, is overseen by the FDA and the American Tissue Bank Association. So these products are 100% safe.
You had a stem cell clinic as well in which you treated elite athletes. How does it benefit athletes in terms of their
Well, of course,
performance?
yes, in many ways, of course, they get injuries, right? And what we want to do is obviously repair and regenerate. I mean, even myself in 2017, I was at the national championships swimming in Minneapolis. And after my fourth event, the butterfly, I won all four so far. I pushed myself out of the water because I was too lazy, I guess, after the meet to swim to the side of the pool. And I felt something off in my shoulders, but I didn't think anything of it. So the next morning I got up, I couldn't lift my arms above 90 degrees, and I couldn't compete that last day of competition. So I came home and I was diagnosed with two full thickness rotator cuff tears on the left and the right. Normally that requires surgery. But I was the CEO of a stem cell company, so I wasn't going to do surgery. I was going to get stem cells, right?
Yeah.
So 3 months later, and we had before and after imaging with most of our patients, we see that stem cells not only repair, but they re-engineer and renew. So my tissues and my rotator cuff tendons were not only fixed, but they were much stronger and much more resilient than they were before I injured them.
Is that
So
right?
it's a way of renewing and anti-aging and making things stronger, right? And so that's what we can do for athletes. It's not just repairing, but making it stronger than it ever was before, right? And then I think there's also a preventative component because we know athletes, there's micro trauma upon micro trauma. And at a certain age, they got to stop play professional sports, but we can prolong their career if on the off season we preventatively inject their major joints and do IV therapies with these stem cells to repair and regenerate the micro trauma that didn't translate into an injury yet.
And how long does it take before you see the benefits of that treatment? For example, you just talked about your shoulders. How long did it take for you to
Yeah.
recover and to regenerate?
The pain and inflammation usually goes significantly down pretty quickly in a few days to 1 to 2 weeks. So you feel that difference pretty quickly if there's pain and inflammation involved, if it's something acute. But to get a complete repair of soft tissue, meaning muscles, tendons, those types of things, up to 3 months for a complete repair. When it's something more a cartilage, like an arthritic knee in a 70-year-old, that can take up to 6 months. And when it comes to neurological things like neuropathy, because we have a high success rate in neuropathy patients, we're talking about up to 9 months and a year for the maximum benefits. They will see results sooner, but the maximum benefits could take up to a year from one single treatment.
Amazing. Now, I
Yeah.
know that you're a keen biohacker. And when I was at that conference in Dallas, Dave Asprey was saying that the biohacking industry is now a $63 billion industry since 10 years ago when he first started the biohacking conference. It's here in Australia, it's still a relatively new concept, and people coming into biohacking are uncertain about where to start. What would your recommendation be in terms of your top 6 or so, biohacks that you think people could kick off with if they were coming into biohacking?
Well, I treat a lot of people with, ailments. And so I think we all need to make sure we have the foundations in place. And yes, there's great equipment. You saw it in Dallas, right? We got hyperbaric chambers. We got whole body photobiomodulation devices, and they can become expensive. And we got all kinds of gadgets and tools, and it's all cool. And we got hydrogen machines, which is a few $1,000s also. But I think we got to put the foundation in place first. If we want to really build something strong and really live to be 100 years old, but able to do the things that a 30, 40-year-old can do, then we need to build a foundation. So I always start with, 7 foundations, and I can explain them briefly if you like to. Things that we all can do without having to put in money that's going to make a drastic change in our life pretty quickly. And it's easy to do and it doesn't cost any money. And once we do put the foundation in place, then we can look at, okay, let's get a hydrogen piece of equipment, or let's look at a a high quality vibration plate for at home, and let's look at this and let's look at that. But I think, sometimes we look at biohacking, oh, let's take a shortcut. But again, in health and life, there are no shortcuts. We got to set that foundation first.
Yeah, I completely agree. So you said you've got 7 biohacks that you're happy to break down for
Yeah,
us, and I completely agree that we have to start with the foundations and go
yes.
back to the basics, I think, because people can get overwhelmed.
Yeah. If our body is in a state of emergency, if we're trying to fight a disease, a biohack is not going to work because the body's not going to respond to it. It's in an emergency state, right? So when I have clients, I usually put them in 3 categories. Category number 1 is we need to regain control of your health. So those are people that are in pain, people that are overweight, people that are diagnosed with a disease. We got to get back to normal first. Then the second step is we need to go to optimal health. Now we got to implement lifestyle modifications, build a foundation so that we can feel strong and vital and energetic again, right? That's optimal health. And only then optimal health would be the foundation to maximize the benefits of biohacking, objectively reversing our biological age. So we really got to guide people through that. But I would say the top 7 are simple, they're easy, everybody heard of them, but nobody implements them, right? And so with my clients, I take those 7 and mold them into a custom power routine that only has to be a few minutes per day. It doesn't have to be hours and hours and hours. But number 1, I would say, is oxygen, right? We all breathe in air, 21% oxygen, but the majority of us have no clue how to breathe. We all breathe through the mouth. The mouth is designed to what? To eat and to talk. And the nose here is designed to breathe. There's a reason this is on our face. It's not to sneeze, it's to breathe. And so we need to learn to breathe properly. And a normal breath is 5 counts in through the nose, capturing all the nitric oxide that's sitting here and driving it deep into the lower lobes of the lung and into the cells and the tissues. And then exhale 6 counts through the nose. That's a normal breath. Now, if we do a little bit of math, then we know that if we do it that way, we have an average of only 5.5 breaths per minute. So that would increase our efficiency of breathing by 300%. Why is that important? Of course, we need oxygen to live, but at the same time, oxygen equals oxidative stress. It's rusting. Our tissues and our organs and our cells are rusting when there's too much oxygen. So when we want to live longer and healthier, we need to increase the efficiency of breathing. So step number 1, learn to breathe properly. It doesn't cost anything. There's YouTube. The best app out there today, it used to be called the Breath Source, but now it's called The Source. All the breath masters of the world, the top breath masters, are on this one platform. You can download it for free. Start learning to breathe properly, increase your efficiency. And as you know, Azra, breathwork has many more other applications. It's a way to get into a meditative state. It's a way to get into from sympathetic to a parasympathetic system. There's so many applications of breathwork. It may be your number 1 biohack is learning to breathe properly. So that's number 1. Number 2, water. We are a plumbing system. We have a cardiovascular system. We have a lymphatic system, which is part of the immune system. And so think about a plumbing system. We need to hydrate constantly. And everybody heard it. We got to drink enough water. So yes, you got to drink more water, but also you got to think the other way a little bit too. You got to avoid drinking anything else. If you're drinking your coffees and your sodas and your energy drinks and all that kind of stuff, those are acidic and they dehydrate you. So now you're offsetting your water consumption by taking things in that dehydrate you, right? So be careful there. You got to stay hydrated. And many drinks do exactly the opposite. And then, of course, if you can, just like you and I, we make it hydrogen water. But make sure it's clean water. So based on where you live, you may want to check out what toxins are in your drinking water and then purchase the appropriate, water filtration systems to make sure you have clean water. So that would be number 2. Number 3, let's do movement. Because we just talked about we're a plumbing system. So things need to move. Stagnation equals disease. And so I didn't say exercise, right? Because it's a dirty word, but movement is important because there are people that exercise, they go to the gym an hour and a half every day, but then they sit still at their sedentary job, for example, selling insurance for 8 hours. From a health point of view, that's not the way to go, right? Because stagnation is disease. So it's important to go out for walks, to dance, to keep moving, to stand up, sit down, constantly move because stagnation is disease. Now, if you cannot move because you have that sedentary job or whatever other reasons, that's when you can look at technologies, right? Vibration devices, mini trampolines, all that kind of stuff that's out there. So number three, movement. Number four, the opposite of movement, rest. And you mentioned it. You slept like a baby in Dallas. We need to find ways to get into a deep delta sleep because that's where we repair. That's where we regenerate. That's when we renew, right? It's like I always give the example of a supermarket. If the people that restock the shelves during the night go on strike 1 or 2 days, there's no supermarket. It's the same with our body. That's when our body gets back to normal. That's when it restocks, repairs, renews. And most of us don't sleep well. We wake up tired. And that means we get to in a vicious cycle of poor and worse performance. So we need to find a way. And just to give you two examples, I just work with my clients and find an evening power routine that works for them so they get into a deep delta sleep. But just to give two tips on this one. Number one, don't snack or eat foods 3, 4, even 5 hours before you go to bed, because if your digestive system is working, how can you get into a restful sleep, right? And then the other thing is, just like everybody else, my mind used to go crazy when I go to bed. Oh, I got to this tomorrow. I got to go there. What I'm going to say during this meeting, and your mind's going. So
Yep.
many people can't fall asleep because they're worried, they're thinking, their mind's in overdrive. So what I do as part of my evening routine is I do 1 minute of visualization where I walk myself through the next 24 hours and make the right decision at each point of contact. So now I already made the decisions for the next 24 hours. I know what's coming. So now I don't have to worry about it, right? So those are just two examples, but we need to wake up energized, ready to attack the day. And if that's not happening, we got to do something about it. That's number four. Number five, light. Light stimulates all biological, physiological, and nutritional processes in the body. And so we humans, we wear too much clothes. We're not exposed to sunlight. So when you go out there, try to do shorts on, take your shirt off in the backyard, spend more time outdoors with less clothes. Now, don't confuse light with heat. Heat is exhaustive, right? We're talking about sunlight, morning, evening. The best example, I think, is look at all the animals around the equator in the tropical rainforest. We talk about Bengal tigers, we talk about gorillas, we talk about all these colorful birds and animals that are vibrant and alive versus the opposite, animals that don't see sunlight. A mole, it's even blind and it doesn't have any colors. Right? Who do you want to be, right? And the difference there is sunlight. Sunlight really stimulates all biological processes. So we got to just go out for lunch if it's not raining and eat our lunch outside. We got to go for a walk. We got to take the family outside instead of we can play our board games outside. We can go to parks, spend more time outdoors. It's easy to do. Just got to do it. Number six is what most people always talk about, upgrading your diet, right? What do we take in our body? I think the best way to explain this to get a general view on what we need to do, because we can talk about diet 48 hours straight, right? But I think people need to understand, which is what I believe, is that there's only one cause of all disease. It's toxemia. Toxemia literally means toxins in the blood. But in a little bit more detail, what it means is as part of daily living, as part of our metabolism, we obviously produce waste. But in a healthy organism, that waste or those toxins are eliminated by the body through the kidneys, the bowels, the skin, etc. So no harm is done. However, today we take in and are exposed to far more toxins than the body possibly can eliminate. So now there's an accumulation of toxins in our blood and our body, and that's what we call toxemia. Now, research shows that toxemia does two things. Number one, these toxins, and we talked about this earlier, these toxins steal an electron from a healthy atom, which then becomes unstable, which is a free radical, right? And number two, which is even easier to understand, now we are in a state of constant emergency because we cannot keep up with the elimination of these toxins. And in conventional medicine, that state of emergency is referred to as systemic inflammation, the cause of almost all disease. So in order to stay disease free, we simply need to keep toxemia in check. And theoretically, it's easy because what we need to do is we need to reduce the intake and exposure to toxins from what? Man-made foods, man-made drinks, right? Over-the-counter prescription medication, household products, cleaning products, cosmetic products that we put in our skin, all that kind of stuff. And last but not least, electromagnetic radiation from all our Bluetooth devices, Bluetooth appliances, our Wi-Fi routers. We need to put things in place to reduce and mitigate those as much as we can, while simultaneously increasing the nutrients that do what? Fight free radical damage. We talked about that today. Fight systemic inflammation and repair our DNA. And we don't have to become health freaks, but if we can simply tip that balance, we're going to be bulletproof against viruses, diseases of the 21st century.
I think inflammation is so chronic in society right now. I know, obviously in the US, there's an obesity issue, metabolic issue there. We've got the same
Mhm.
here in Australia. Why do you think it is that so many people fall into the trap of eating processed foods, processed drinks, as you've just outlined, rather than, eating something that's going to nurture their body, heal their body? Food is medicine if you're eating the right food, right? So,
Yeah,
but so many of us get it wrong and we end up suffering as a consequence of it. And we continue to abuse our bodies in that way and end up with chronic illness. And it's not until we end up often chronically ill that we decide, oh no, oh my God, I'm unwell. I need to do something to fix this, when we can actually be doing things to prevent it, as you've outlined so well today.
yeah, you're 100% correct, and it's sad, but there's different components to it. First of all, propaganda, right? The TV, the news, it's they're advertising all the bad stuff, and the bad stuff is addictive because it's loaded with sugars and all types of things that have an addictive effect, right? Because we talk about drugs and smoking, but the biggest addiction in the world is food, right? But it's not regarded as such. So, number one, propaganda. Number two, I think that obviously we are modern slaves. We don't wear shackles, but we are pushed kind of into a comfort zone. We're supposed to do A, B, C, and D. And it's back to Rome where we have bread and games. So we get the modern conveniences of life, which is Netflix and an iPhone. And we work, work, work all day. And then we come home and we have these comforts of life and we're content with them. And the problem with that is obviously that, when we don't get out of that comfort zone, we really don't discover our purpose. We don't become extraordinary. We never will become the best version of ourselves. We live without purpose, without passion, and we'll end up dying without fulfillment and full of regret. And that's where we are. But we are these modern slaves that are content and that will choose short-term pleasures and indulgences over the real treasures of life, which are what? Health, happiness, and abundance, right? Abundance is not just money, but sharing your abundance and finding fulfillment in life, living for service. And that's what we got away from. And so most people are stuck in this trap. And it's people like us that hopefully can wake up a fair percentage of them and say, look, guys, there's so much more potential in you. You have superpowers. You need to unleash them. Let's get out of this comfort zone. Let's upgrade your body, your mind, your life, and let's go and let's help and let's be the best version of ourselves. And that takes a little bit of guidance and mentoring and inspiration for people to get them out of that, comfort zone, because that's what it is.
Yeah, it sure does. But unfortunately, the human condition is that we don't often like change, right? So it really is a mindset shift that also
Yeah.
has to occur. How do you work with your clients in terms of trying to get them to have that mindset shift?
Well, that's we had number diet was number 6, so seven is what you just revealed it. It's mindset. Upgrading the mind is foundation number 7. It's the one I start with, right? Because the mind controls the body, controls health, controls disease. So if we don't address it, all the things we just talked about is not going to be as effective, right? Number one, the mind is also the blueprint to your future, to your success or your failure. And most of us obviously are held back by the past because there's many events that we label as failures, and they're not failures, they're lessons. And if we look at those as lessons, then we can take those lessons and move forward. So with many of my clients, whether they're top athletes or top executives or whether they're battling cancer or neurodegenerative disease, it's the same. It's a mindset. And so I believe that we're all spirits and our spirit choose our body for a very specific purpose and reason. And then there's our mind, and our mind's there to try to make sense of it and allow us to live our purpose. So why is that not happening? Well, the answer is ego, right? Our ego operates in our conscious mind, and our ego tries to protect us from distress, but it only can do that based on the information in the conscious mind, which is very limited because most of our information is stored in the unconscious mind. The conscious mind only processes and stores information of which we pay attention to. If you're listening to this podcast, if you're reading a book, watching TV, that's the information that will be stored in the conscious mind. All the other 14,000 messages that we are bombarded with on a daily basis are stored in the unconscious mind. So we need to realize that the unconscious mind is where our potential lies. That's where we can connect with the universe and its resources. So when I talk about upgrading the mind or the mindset, what I mean is we need to learn to put our ego aside and tap into the unconscious mind, because that's where your full potential lies. And so we need to work on belief systems, right? So for example, I got two cancer patients right now. The first thing I do is really work on belief system, because they've been labeled with something. You have this type of cancer. That's bad, so it's about what are you thinking, what words are you speaking. It's all got to be positive and projected to the future. So instead of having them think that they have cancer and all the negative stuff going with that, I have them think about, we're going to overcome the cancer. We're going to see your grandkids grow up and you're going to still play 18 holes of golf, right? And we're going to use tools such as visualization, meditation, manifestation, gratitude journaling, breath work to put that picture forward and be pulled forward by the future. Because if there's any doubt in your mind that you're going to overcome the cancer, overcome a disease, win the Olympic Games in Paris in a new world record, if there's any doubt in your mind, then the universe has two options: failure or success. If there's no doubt in your mind that you're going to accomplish something or that you're going to overcome disease, then the universe only has one option: a big win, right? And so you're 100% right that mindset is the number one. And it's something that today we have many tools where we can help yourself or help our clients with, to actually be pulled forward by the future instead of held back by the past.
It's such an important hack, I think, because I remember at a longevity conference that I attended in Singapore, at the University of Singapore, some months ago. And I was speaking to another doctor there who works a lot with cancer patients. And she said that she knows as soon as a client walks into her door as to whether they're going to survive the disease or not, purely by their mindset.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really an interesting point, and quite a scary one too, because if you're a naturally born pessimist, as an example, and I've come across a few of those in my time,
Yeah, sure.
then it makes it, so much more difficult for you to actually turn that around. Have you seen people be able to turn that around, even if they are
Yes.
naturally predisposed to being that way? I'm trying to give hope to people.
Yeah. Yes, they have to come to a point where they really want our help, right? Versus the conventional medicine help. And at that point, yes, you can turn them around because they're 100% in and they understand that that's what they need to do. And then you give them the tools and teach them the skills on how to do that, right? First, they need to have the knowledge like, okay, this is what I need to do. This is where things are going wrong. Then we need to give them the skills, or they can acquire the skills. And then the third component of a habit is willingness, right? I can't help them with their willingness. So first, they have to be willing, and then they have to get the knowledge, and then they have to acquire the skill. But yes, it certainly can be done. I think the problem starts with the fact that the doctors put the patients in that negative state to start off with, right? Because we label them with something negative. We give them a bad prognosis. And so now you have colon cancer. And in this colon cancer, this is your survival rate. And in 6 months, you may be dead. I mean, that's a very bad start about about mindset, right?
Mm,
Because if you believe that, then that's exactly what's going to happen.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
What's your favorite biohack right now?
Well, I would say breath work.
Yeah.
Really breathing properly and using breath for many other applications. We know that a lot of people are stressed. They're always in a sympathetic flight or fight state. And so a reset breath, which takes 1 minute or even less, can get anybody quickly from a sympathetic state into a parasympathetic state. So I think there's so many applications of breath work. And again, I would suggest you download The Source, which is an app you can download to learn all those applications, because these are tools you have now. Like, oh, I'm stressed. Okay, I'm going to do this type of breath. And in 60 seconds from now, I'm into a parasympathetic state, right? Those are very powerful tools. So that's just an example. I did a TEDx talk on that, actually, on the reset breath and how to increase your social skills too with a reset breath. But I would say breath work. I would say today hydrogen inhalation. And then also I'll make sure that I have an ample amount of NAD plus and NADPH in my body for the repair of the DNA and for that electron reservoir that we talked about. So there's several things that we can do, taking the precursors, taking supplements, strength training, resistance training, and those types of things that all would stimulate the production of those two. But we also got to try to do things and implement things in our daily life to not exhaust those resources, right? For example, electromagnetic radiation exhausts our DNA's NAD plus supply. So we don't want to be on that phone next to that Wi-Fi wireless computer all day long. It exhausts that NAD plus, which then prevents us from repairing DNA, etc., etc.
You've touched on EMF, and there again at the conference, I saw a number of stalls there in terms of being able to manage that. What's your favorite way of managing EMF exposure?
Well, that was my best-selling book, actually, the EMF one. But there's three approaches that need to happen. Number one, we need to do whatever we can inside our workplace and inside our living space, our home, to mitigate, electromagnetic frequencies. So the first thing you do is you buy an EMF meter and you find electromagnetic hotspots in your house, so you know where you don't want to sleep, where you don't want to put the dinner table, etc. You want to check out all the outlets for dirty electricity, and if there's dirty electricity, you can plug something into, again, neutralize that. And then we talk about our phones. We don't want to have them on here. We want to put them away on speaker as far as we can. We don't want to charge them on the nightstand while we're sleeping. We don't really want to talk when we're driving or walking, because exponentially the radiation increases when we're moving, because then it's always needs to reconnect that signal on and on and on all the time when we're moving. When your bars are low, you don't really want to communicate either, because again, the radiation exponentially increases when there's a low reception. So those are all little things. Your Wi-Fi router, if you have it, you can put them in a Faraday bag. So you buy a little Faraday bag, you put a router in there, you still get the signal, but the radiation doesn't go out. Don't get any smart appliances. Start plugging in your laptops and ground everything versus the Bluetooth devices. So there's a whole list of things that we can do easily and effectively without having to cost much money inside the house to drastically reduce it. Then the next step is outside the house. You're going to have to kind of, do we have power lines in the air? Are they under the ground? Do I get signals from my neighbor's Wi-Fi, right? Can I log into their Wi-Fi? Your smart meters, the community, the city put smart meters on your house, which also get the radiation inside. So you can do certain things with all of those to limit it inside the house. And then you can protect yourself, right? So we know that electromagnetic radiation is negative energy in our body. So we can talk about grounding. You probably did that on your podcast before, but we need to start grounding. So when you go outside to get fresh air, when you go outside to get the sunlight, take your shoes off and ground, be in contact with Mother Earth, because you're discharging all that negative energy. And if you can't do that, there's devices. I've been sleeping almost 4 years now on we call it an anti-aging bed cover. It's a bed cover that I plug in, so I'm grounding. And you may say, oh, there's many gadgets out there. Do they really work? Well, that's why I have an EMF meter. I don't care about the research when it comes about those things. I have my meter. I can measure the radiation on my body in volts or millivolts. And then when I put my hands on my bed cover, it goes to zero, which means is I close the circle with Mother Earth and I'm discharging all that negative energy. So when I sleep 7 to 8 hours, during that 7, 8 hours, I'm discharging all that negative energy that I build up from all these devices and all that electromagnetic frequencies during the day. So that's another way to really, do that. And I do that when I sit in the couch. I got those devices in my office. You can sit on those devices and you can measure if it's working or not, right? Whether or not you're shielding yourself from that radiation by being grounded with Mother Earth.
What do you say to cynics who don't believe that there are any detrimental health consequences from EMF?
Well, then you just go to the research, right? There's over 30,000 now research out there that shows the detrimental health hazards of electromagnetic radiation. It's just because we can't see it, hear it, or smell it doesn't mean it's not there. It obviously can be measured. Like I just said, I measure it. That's number one. And number two, there always has been this misconception that only ionizing radiation from X-rays and gamma rays is detrimental to our health. And it surely is. But how many times are we exposed to an X-ray? Oh, not that often. But now all this research shows that the non-ionizing radiation, which is from our Wi-Fi devices, our microwave, our radio, all those types of things, they were falsely considered not harmful because they don't directly affect our cellular health and our DNA, but they do indirectly. And that's been proven over and over again now. And I could explain that scientifically how that works, but it indirectly affects our health and our DNA and our cellular health. And the problem with that is we're exposed to it 24/7, not just once in a blue moon.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for explaining that. I've got one more question for you before I let you go. It's one I ask all my guests. What does it mean to you to live well longer?
Well, it's everything, right? Because I just talked to somebody else. We are focused on our chronological age, which is our date of birth. But if you look around you, you see 60-year-olds that are suffering in and out of the hospital, a whole list of medication and diseases, and they may keep them alive till they're 85, but they're not living, right? They're dying, really. And then we have your 90-year-old who's still walking around the neighborhood and goes play 9 holes of golf and is 100% independent. So chronological age does not matter, right? It's how you feel. It's your biological age. And with biohacking, we can objectively measure if we are reversing our biological age, right? And so it's about quality of life. And I believe today, with the tools and the strategies that we have, that not just the elite, but us, because we don't have to have a lot of money to do this, that we can easily live to be 100 chronologically. But the key here is to be able to do the things that a 40, 50-year-old do. Still play golf, still enjoy your family, still be 100% there with your mind and enjoy life and find fulfillment in life. And that's what it's all about.
Completely agree with you. All right, Dr. Mike, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's teamwork. Thank you for your time.
Well, that's a wrap for today's podcast. Thank you for tuning in. And if you'd like to learn more about biohacking, go ahead and sign up on my website at www.biohack-her.com to get a free copy of my 5 top biohacks to get you kick-started. While you're there, you can also check out my blog page for more tips on biohacking. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, you can do so on Apple, Spotify, and Google Play. Let us know if there's anyone you'd like us to talk to in particular, and we'll endeavour to get them on the podcast. Until next time, remember to live well longer.